Okay, good morning. So on the Seder of Ishtalshels that we're reviewing this Shiurim, after reading the Rebbe's letter last week, I want to go over now to the world of Asiyah. We covered Bria, Yetzirah, and then Asiyah. So just to sum up from the Rebbe's letter, the Rebbe explains a beautiful mashal of a melech, which really is an example that gives us in general a relationship between a leader and his people. It's a melech hanam, but the truth is it's any relationship. So is the melech how he is on his own, beinei bein atzmei, like the Rebbe called the expression, which the Rebbe says like Eid Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. There's no Olamas yet. It's like the Eibishter alone. Hu Shmei Belvad. Then the Eibishter Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyis Leis Baruch Dira B'Tachteinim, in the language of Shari Yichud V'Amuna, Legalis Malchusei Yisbaruch. In Olamas, you need to have Olamas. So it comes at Tzimtzum, and the whole Seder Ishtalshels begins. And in general, 4 steps. Atzilus Bri Yetzirah Asiyah. Atzilus, the Rebbe explains like in this letter, Nela Me'ein Kol Chai, because now the Melech is already being Mitzayir B'Machshavtei, he's envisioning what existence is going to be like. But it's still in his Machshava, still in his thought process. So it's somewhat like we spoke about when I spoke about Atzilus, it's the vision, if you recall. He used the word vision. Bria was outlined, Yetzirah is already shape and form, and Asiyah is the final product, the vision. And even Atzilus the Klolis, before the Tzimtzum, though the Rebbe doesn't say it in the letter, is also, Chassidus explains, that's where you have the concept of Shir Atzmei B'Keyach, Ola B'Ritzeinei. So you already have now a Rotzen for Olamas, but it's still all within the Melech. The only difference is Beinei Lebein Atzmei means there's not even Atzir. He's not even envisioning existence. That's what's called really Lifnei Tzimtzum. But even Lifnei Tzimtzum, there are levels, Atzilus the Klolos, which are sometimes called the Esses Firas Agnuzis, where God is envisioning. In the Olamas the Protis, that's called Atzilus. Then there's how he goes into the Palterin, using the Rebbe's mashal, to the chamber where he sits on Kisei Malchusei. That's the world of Bria, which is called Elam HaKisei. And here he's already associating with his ministers. And they're aware of him, and they have a bittul to him. That's why the Elam HaBriya is Almid Iskasi, is a bittul of the Nevroim. But there's Nevroim. It's no longer the Melech alone, even as he's envisioning existence. So Bria is already a relationship, but it's only with the ministers, which means with the highest level of spiritual entities, if you wish. And he tells them what he wants. He gives them his instructions. Then comes the next step where they send out shluchim, because the goal is not just to speak to the ministers in Paltin Shel Melech, and he's sitting in his palace. Even as he's associated with them, the goal is to reach, the Rebbe says, Kol ha'am b'chol katz v'tevel, all of existence. And that's where the Malachim, Ne'elam Yetzirah is called Elam HaMalachim. Malachim are the shluchim that the king sends out based on the instructions to the ministers. In Bria, sends out the instructions now reaching B'chol Katz V'Tevel. In other words, Yetzirah is already a world that is not bottled like Bria. That's what's called Almid Izgalia. Again, the Rebbe doesn't go into all the pratim, but you can extrapolate from what the Rebbe says. So Yetzirah is already a world so-called chutz from the Paltin Shel Melech. And it's still a world of a Ruchnisdik world. That's where they send the shluchim out, L'chol Katz V'Tevel, and even to the farthest corners, and that the Rebbe says Elam Asiyah, called Elam al Galgalim, because Galgalim is Guf and Nefesh, and it's the root, the Sherish of all the Nevroim Be'elam Hazeh. So for example, when we say En L'cha Esev, She'en Le Mazel, She'en Le Gedal, that everything in this world has a Sherish in Ruchnius, that's telling it to grow or to be. So essentially, Elam al Galgalim is the furthest world, where the shluchim go are carrying the message of the Eibishter, of the Melech Malcham Lachim, Kodesh Baruch Hu, all the way to the farthest outskirts of existence. And that's Asiyah, with the goal that they listen to what the Melech has to say. So there you have in this mashal the steps. Now there are many other examples that can be given, and there are many other ways to explain it, but this is just one powerful way, because what it does is it tells us two few things. That first of all, the Eibishter is beyond everything on one hand, but he chose to engage with Olamos, with existence, because that's his kavanah. And not just with Olamos that are higher Olamos, ruchnisdike ones that are bottle, but also to Am that's nifred, Am that's the Zorim v'nifradim. Ministers, the Zorim, are closer to the Melech. But he's also going, Ein Melech b'lei Am, is reaching even the furthest, meaning how the neshamas come down to this world where they're not margish, they don't feel a lukus, but the goal is that we should unite and connect, obviously, with the Melech. So what you have here is a picture that allows for both things, existence to exist, but also a method of how to align ourselves to what the Eibishter wants, what the Melech wants. So in that process, it's a very logical process, Bria, Tzir, Asiyah. So I want to go and elaborate on the world of Asiyah. So first of all, let's make this clear. All these Olamos are Olamos ruchnim. Asiyah is unique, that it has a ruchnisdika part, has a gashmisdika part. Again, sometimes this isn't spelled out explicitly in Chassidus, but it's very clear. Asiyah ruchnis is Neseder Hadvarim, from Bria, Yitzir Asiyah. So it's the third step, like Elam al Golgalim. Even the Golgalim themselves are not ruchnim, but Asiyah has a ruchnisdika side to it. Because in the part of the plan, when the Eibishter chose to create a world, like I mentioned, let's say using the example of architecture, or the same thing with writing a plan, a business plan, or a book. So you have the outline as Bria, the Chemer, Blit Surah, the outline, the general structure. Yitzira is the details, Surah. So now you have the details. And Asiyah is the final product. But that product, final, is still in a ruchnisdika sense. But then, from there goes, the next step is Asiyah Gashmis. And that's where we come into play, this world as we know it. So what is this world called? Elam Asiyah HaGashmis, and sometimes you add the word HaChumrius. I'll explain that shortly. So here is a few things that have to be addressed, or quite a few things I should say. First of all, how does from Ruchnis jump to Gashmis? As much as it says Chassidus, as much as you put effort in Ruchnis, a Ruchni will never become a Gashmi. So you now introduced a new Kayach. Because even if you mamayet an Eir, you diminish light, or diminish Ruchnis. Let's take a Neshama. Neshama is a Ruchnisdik entity. Even if it goes through all the tzimtzumim, Shama shenasati bi teherihi, at the barasa, at the yatzata, at the nafachtabi, at the mishamrim kirbi, a ruchni will never become a gashmi. Just like light will never become a keli. You can diminish the light and you can maybe not see any light, but the absence of ruchnis doesn't create gashmis. You need another koyach to create the yeshma ayin from ruchni to gashmi. So in Asiyah, clearly another power comes into play. That's one thing we need to talk about. The second is the other hand. So what's its relationship with the ruchnis? If you're going to already have the koyach ha'atzmus, as we'll soon discuss, that creates from ayin to yesh, so what do you need the Holy Shtalshalos for? From Atzilas, Bri, Yitzira, Asiyah ruchnis to Asiyah gashmis. So that's what I want to address in this shiur. And obviously more details that are connected to this. We say every Friday night, Seif Maisa b'machshavet tchila. Maisa is Asiyah. It's all b'machshavet tchila. Why? Because going back to the mashal, if you want to build a house or a building, you could have all the plans, the vision, all the plans, the whole outline, the tzura, and even Asiyah ruchnis. But if you don't have a building, b'payil, ikar chas min hasefer, ha'maiso ikar. the main thing you need is the Gashmizdik, and that's why Seif Ma'aseh Machshava Tchila. So this whole process we spoke about before, where all of it Seinein b'Machshavte, the Eibishter's Mitzayer, all that Machshava is in order for there to be a Ma'aseh, Seif Ma'aseh b'Machshava Tchila. Chassidus explain Machshava Tchila. It doesn't say Tchila sa Machshava. It's a Machshava Tchila, meaning Tchila that's even higher than Machshava. So it's rooted in the highest levels, or in the language we're all familiar with. Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu. Lias Leis Baradira B'Tachteinim. Tachteinim is the lowest of worlds. The Alderoshan of the Alter Rebbe in Perek Lamed Vov and Tanya, Tachteinim Begili Elikusei is Baruch B'Helam Acher Helam, to the point that it creates Elam Hazeh Tacht N'Shein Tachten L'Matim Imenu, Elam Hazeh Gashmi V'Achumri, Moli Klippes V'Sitra Achere, Ad She'emrim Aniva Avseid. That's how low it goes. All that is all aware, Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, as we know, that's in Atzmus. And that's why when we say, why Nesava? We don't know, because of Atayv and Shtok and Kasha, you're talking about a level that's higher than Kashas, therefore higher than the whole structure of Seichel and logic and rationale and so on. Okay. So Asiyah carries the highest levels because that's the whole Kavan, the B'Tachteinim. Not Atzilus, not B'riya, not Yitzira. Again, the language of the Alter Rebbe, Hoyel Ulahem Yiridalei Be'er Pon of Yisbarach. The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya. Why? Because Atzilus, what would be the purpose? Atzilus, as much as it's Elikus, but it's lower than, higher than Atzilus. So why the Eibishter create a world just to have a Gili Elikus that's lower than a higher level? Tachteinim adds something that's not just lower, it's a whole different reality. It's a menaget elikus. It's a element completely on elikus. And that's where the Nesava was. So you can't say Nesava, Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyislei Dira B'Atzilus. Because the Dira in Atzilus, there's a Dira in Ak is even better than Atzilus. And Eilei Seflin Finat Tzimtzum is better than all of them, if you're talking about Giluyim. What El Mazar Tach Asiyah does, Asiyah Gashmi B'Chumri, is add something that's not Giluyim. It's a Yesh HaGashmi. And the Yesh HaGashmi doesn't have any Gili in it, and after there's the Nisab. That's one of several explanations in the Tanya. So we understand now that Asiyah is the final product, and that's where the Kavanah is. In the language of Kabbalah, just to give it a little more substance, when we talked about this many Shiurim back, in Kabbalah is the language in Gulin v'Yesher, right? Or language of, or Makif and Primi, or Siv of Kalam and Mala Kalam. That the way the Seder Shtalshalos was created, the Eibishter, as it says, the Loshen in Eitz Chaim, Acharat Simsim Arishin, which was created a Chol L'Mokim Pone. What happened next? So then the Saba, the Eibishter was Mamshich, Kav V'chut Chotzer V'dak. He sent a ray of light into this Cholol, but it's kav v'dak. It's a kav kotzer v'dak, meaning it's just like think of it like a laser beam. So it comes after the tzimtzum, but it's oir. But it's a mitzumtzum dika. And this creates ma'ila mata because it's yeshu. But the way the Kabbalah explains it, Eitz Chaim explains it, says this kav misagel, chezer the misagel. So the kav didn't just go down, it created an eagle. And then it went down a little further and created a second eagle, and a third eagle, and a fourth eagle. So it's basically gulim b'teichin gulim, like like onion rings. That's the lashon in Chassidus, in Kabbalah. So what you have now is Yeshed is the Pnimi, because Yeshed by definition is Ma'ila Mata, a line. But eagle, as we know, is a makif. An eagle is mashva, cotton begodel. Meaning by eagle, there's no high, there's no low. The eagle is all equal. Why am I mentioning it? Because this is a Loshen Kabbalah, and the Alter Rebbe talks about it in the Ger Sekei Simon Chof, which I'm going to address now. So when you think of Igulin, it goes like this. In Yesher, the higher the kav, the more Gilei Elikus. The lower the kav, the more diminished it is, to the point that the kav is mistayim, it says, in two places, either the end of Atzilus, or a little earlier. There's different opinions. And then after that, it's only the ha'ara of the kav. So the kav is basically like anything, like shining a flashlight. If you're standing close to the flashlight, you're going to see stronger light. If you stand a mile away, you're going to see a very dim light. Because Yeshua is subject to the Hamshacha of Seder Shtalshus, Helam Acher Helam. Igulim, on the other hand, how does an eagle work? If you look at an eagle, the top of the eagle is all the way higher even than the kav, the eagle agadol. But the eagle goes all the way down. The higher the eagle is on top, the lower it goes below. So the igulim, the inside of the so-called onion, if you wish, or the Seder Shtalshus, so the top of the eagle is lower, let's say the igulim of Atzilus. And the lower part of the eagle is the end of Atzilus. But the igulim on the highest levels of the kav, where does it end up if you follow it? It ends up in Asiyah. So Asiyah Lamata, Seif Maisa Machshavet Chila, through the B'chinas HaMakif, is actually rooted higher than the Giluyim. So Atzilus, you could say, is higher than Asiyah in Giluyim and Eidos Pnimim. But in Eidos Makifim, which is Helam, Asiyah has a connection because not Seifim B'tchilas and Tchilas B'Seifim, or Seif Maisa Machshavet Chila, that the end, the bottom of the eagle, is connected to the highest Igulim Lamayla, which obviously is not in Gashmis, it's just a Moshel Ruchni, but it gives us a visualization of what means that Seif Maisa Machshavet Chila. Because the Kavon is not Atzilus and not B'riyonai Yitzir, is Dafka Asiyah. So with this, the Alter Rebbe explains the Geras HaKedesh Simachav, the first point that I made before about what is Asiyah exactly. And just as you probably know, this Geras HaKedesh the Alter Rebbe wrote in Kfar Piyana, which means he was already the last few weeks of his life. The Al Medain, Chaim Chayusi Al Medain. So this may be the last thing that he wrote as a full piece. The Geras HaKedesh Simachav. The Rebbe has a sikha on this, that this and the Nefesh HaShvela that the Alter Rebbe wrote were the two last things the Alter Rebbe, and both of them talk about the mile of Asiyah, which is interesting. The Alter Rebbe was coming to the end of his life in the world of Asiyah. He was focusing that Ikir is Maisa Mitzvahs, Dafken Asiyah. Now, this doesn't take away from Kavonis HaMitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe speaks about Barichis later in time, Ches and on. Kavonis, but it's Kavonis that touch Yitzira, or Briya, or Atzilus even. But then the bottom line is because the Sava did it Tachteinim, you can have all the Kavonis. If you don't do the mitzvah, the Peil Mamish, not become a mitzvah. Kavon without, so start a goof, filler, without Kavonis could goof belay Neshama, but Kavon without filler is Neshama without a goof. And that goof is dafka in this world. So what's the mile of Elam Asiyah? So the Alter Rebbe, not going dafka in order, but in Simachov, and Geras HaKedesh, is the marshal of the seed. What makes things grow in this world? If you put a seed in Shemayim, you plant a seed in the sky, or on a table, not going to produce anything. Dafka ba'aretz. Aretz al-azua tachteina. So the lowest is the only thing that has the power to create yesh mayim. You plant seeds in the ground, which is lower than everything in this world. Ruach, eish ruach mayim offer ha'aretz. That's where you have the power to create a teich eretz desha dafke ba'aretz. Why is that the case? Because of this reason. Because aretz is malchus. Malchus is the lowest of the spheres. In the world of Aveda, it's called the world of Asiyah, Maisa. And a Maisa has in it the power to create something and generate an energy that nothing else can generate. This is Mamat Lamayla from our Aveda. But the truth is, it's also how the Eibishter made it. So here's the classic line in the Geras HaKedesh Simon Chav, one of the biggest Chidushim, maybe the biggest Chidush in Chassidus Chabad. And Chutei Devurim, the Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe writes that when the Chassidim first heard this, read and learned this Geras HaKedesh, since it gekeichelt, they were making tumble sauces and spirals from this Chidush. What does the Alter Rebbe say about Asiyah? So he says that the way the Eibishter created the world is the Atmos, Mamshech Eir, And Eir Ein Sof is God's so-called instrument to create. Eir. Because Eir is Me'ein HaMoyer. So the Eibishter transferred through Eir his power to create Yesh Ma'ayin. But then he adds the key words. Rak hu levadei b'keicha v'yicholtei l'havus Yesh Ma'ayin. Yesh. A yesh that feels she'ein le'ila v'siba acheres chas v'shalom. It does not feel it has a source. Everything in Ishtalshus, and logically so, feels a mokir. Whether it's malachim, whether it's nishamis, whether it's oid. Oid for sure is be'ein ha'moyer. It's david b'moyer. It's dafki the yesh agashmi. What distinguishes the yesh from all the levels? Even nasir ruchnis. So it's lower than bria. It's not magdish alakus. Like we said, like the sorim in the Altin Shamelach, they feel godliness because they see the melech. The Yitzhira may not see the melech, but they feel it in some way. Asiyah as well. Still, Galgalin, the Malachim or the Afanim of Asiyah, there's something. It's only the Yesh HaGashmi. And what distinguishes that we don't feel we have a mocker. Let's elaborate a moment on that. We all know our parents gave birth to us. We all know. Do you mind telling them downstairs to go outside or quiet? We all know that our parents have parents. And it goes back all the way to Adam Arish. But we know it. You don't feel that you're an extension of your mother or your father. I'm talking about even a mother-father, which is a Gashmizdika thing. So maybe, when we were born, we were connected by an umbilical cord. But we feel independent entities. Kolshke become how much more so, we can believe, Amunah Pshuta, Ein Dover Eis Atzmei, nothing created itself, which is the Be'er Elam, Umanhige, as Mahava Mechayim Mekayim, the world's every Rega Mechodosh, including you and I. Have you met anyone that feels that? We don't feel it. We learn about it. It makes sense. We could even live by it. A person has a little bit, or a lot of bit in Yerushalayim. Hini Hashem mitzvah olav. Brechin kleis v'lev. But that's an Aveda. An Aveda you need to do all the time. It doesn't come natural. Why doesn't it come natural to us? It makes so much sense. If the Eibishter is giving you chayis, and he's being mechayim, not just he providing you, he's giving you a gift called, someone gives you bread or sustenance. So fine, you thank them. But we're talking about the Eibishter, the Mokar HaChayis, pushing our oxygen. How's it possible that we don't feel that? And the answer is because it comes from Atzmus. Just a second. How does this work? Because it comes from Atzmus. And like he continues in Ageres HaKedesh, what he says is, because hu levadei b'keicha v'yicholtei, because the Eibishter Atzmus is mitziyusim Atzmusei, the ein le'ila v'siba acheres. Actually, the Chaz v'Shalom is on Atzmus, not on the Nevroim. The Chaz v'Shalom there is this, that we really do have a mocker, a ila v'siba. But Atzmus really does not have a ila v'siba acheres Chaz v'Shalom, shekodmolei Chaz v'Shalom. Because everything in existence has an ila v'siba. Even Eir Ein Sof, the siba and the ila is a moyer, the Eibishter. Only thing that has no mocker, that has no cause, is mitzusim atzmusei, which is the Eibishter Atzmus himself. And that's why he can create a nivra like us that also does not feel that has a mocker. Basically, if we were created just by Oyer can't give us something it doesn't have on its own. Since it does feel its mocker, how can it create something that won't feel a mocker? Oyer can create another level of Oyer, but they all are connected to their moyer, Davik b'moyer. So why is this such a big chiddush? Even though it's not the main emphasis I want to talk about, but it's important. Because you could argue, before the Alter Rebbe wrote this, who says? The fact that we feel that we're a yesh and we don't feel we have a source, You could argue it's a chson. It's the mocker for all problems. All fights, all machlekas, everything comes from the yeshus of a person. I have an ego, I feel I'm self-made, that will come jealousy, competition, kina, v'sachos. I mean, everything that is negative about the human race comes from the fact that we feel we don't have an illa v'sibah. That's why in the Olamas Ruchnim there's no machlekas, there's no disagreements, there are no dintetas, there are no fights, because it's Olam Ruchni. Everything there knows it's mocker. Only in this world do we have all the problems of this world, which is all rooted in the yeshus of a human being. If there was no yesh, we wouldn't have any challenges. So you could argue the yesh is a mile, it's a chson. The Eibishter wanted to create it that way because he gave us a mission. That we should take the yesh and turn it into an ayah. The Alter Rebbe is the first to come and say, the Alter Rebbe is not saying yeshus is a mile. He's saying the idea that we could be a yesh, has to be rooted somewhere in the highest levels of Kedusha, in Atzmus himself. That's why we feel. Now the Aveda is not to remain a yesh. Obviously the Aveda is to take the yesh, like we say, take the ani and turn it into an ayin. But the very fact that we exist like that, the Asiyah Gashmis, v'chiruch v'chumris, it feels like ein li'ila v'siba, that's coming from the highest levels. Because that's the kavon atzmis. Remember, Seif Ma'aseh Machshava Tchila. The kavon is there should be a world of Asiyah, not just Asiyah Gashmis, v'chumris. Chumris adds, Gashmi is already ein li'ila v'siba, but chumris is also grob. A certain crassness or coarseness, however you translate chumri. To the point that the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Vov, the first chelik of Tanya, Moli klippas v'sitra achre. V'shoyim gevrim bei. Menagdim poshet, not just a helam on elikus, menagit elikus. To the point that they say, Aniva Afsi'ed. What do you need more than that? Aniva Afsi'ed is the exact opposite of Ened Movade. Ani, I, and nothing else. The ultimate yesh. So how is that possible? Because Ein Le'ila V'Siba. Because that's exactly what Atzmus wanted. Dafka Mitzias, that feels completely independent, and that Mitzias should be mevatel itself through Aveda, and come to realize that you're not self-contained, you are rooted and originate from Elikus. And that's why the Rebbe uses the word. I mean, people repeat it so many times, but don't even, I think appreciate the words, especially in the later years, that the Yesh HaNivri becomes one with the Yesh HaMiti. What does that mean? Ayin is all the worlds in between. That's Ruchnis, is Ayin, Bittel. Yesh HaNivra means this Yesh, that Ein Le'ila V'Siba, that feels it's on its own, becomes one with the Yesh HaMiti. Had we been created from levels that are not the Yesh HaMiti, then you never get connected to Atzmus. But Nesava Kosh Baruch Hu was dafk in the Yesh HaNivra, not in the Ayin, not in the Ilim Misal Yenim. So essentially embedded in our worst part of who we are, or let's put it this way, the potential to be the worst, which is Aniva Afsi Eid, embedded in that feeling, that's only possible because you don't feel Eila V'Siba, is rooted in the highest levels of Atzmus Mamish. So the deepest darkness is rooted in the highest Sherish. And especially in this way, that the fact that we sense ourselves as independent entities, which as I said could be the root of all problems, is actually, it's rooted in the deepest level, with the kavanah that we should transform it. And that's why you need the higher worlds. Because the kavanah is the Yesh HaNivra. But how does a Yesh HaNivra climb and become aware of Elikus? That's why you need Asiyah Ruchnius. You have to climb the ladder. Sulam Mutzavatza, Resha Magia Shamaima, 4 rungs. Asiyah Ruchnius, Yitzira, Bria, Atzilus. As we become more acclimated and train ourselves to become connected to Ruchnius. In the language of the Sikhs that I'm sure you're all familiar with, the toss of the Meraglim was they wanted Ruchnius without Gashmis. They wanted to stay in the Midbar, because that's where a place where they don't have any problems. Anani HaKoved, Lechem and Hashamayim, the Eresh Miriam. Eretz Echel Sheshver, they said. Going to Eretz Yisrael, Eretz that's going to consume us. Get busy with Gashmis. We want to stay in Kailo. No offense. Everything has its time. For 40 years, yeah, but that's not the kavanah. The kavanah is to go into Eretz Nesheves, a real world with challenges, and bring Elikuz there. Kairach heard this, so he said, oh, so they were wrong. The kavanah is dafke Gashmis. So he went the other extreme. Famous sikhs of the Rebbe, Cheliches Kairach. He said, Madu tisnasu. Kol ha'edek deishehim. All of us are holy. Even in Asiyah, Ruchni, Gashmis, and Chumris. What do we need, B'chlal, Moshe, An? What do we need, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzira, Asiyah? We have everything here. Atzmus wants the Yesh. What was his mistake? Yeah, the Yesh is the Kavanah, Maragnim were wrong, you can't just stay with Ruchnis, but you also, doesn't mean you don't start worshipping Gashmis. The Kavanah is Dafkin come in this world, but then to recognize that this world is elevated to Yitzira, Bri, and Yitzira, Bria, and Atzilus, and the higher worlds. You need to have a Moshe V'Aaron because you need direction. And what happens Takat Keirach V'Adosei? Eretz Echel Sheshva, exactly what the Maraglim said. The Eretz came, the very Eretz that they worshipped opened up and swallowed them. Because when you start worshipping Gashmis, it ends up consuming you. So we have to be in this world, but we don't have to be of this world. In other words, you have to be in this world and come down. Al Korcha Chatachai has to always be the Hergish. You come to this world because the Eibishter wants us to come to the world of the Yesh. But Neshama should never get too comfortable here. His comfort zone is in Ruchnis. The goal is to come into Gashmis and make Gashmis feel a tshuka and a tzemoyin and a longing to get into Ruchnis. Just to give an example, there was a shliach, went out on shlichus in the earlier years, and he would come back to New York whenever he had a chance. Every month, I don't know, quite often. Rabbi Chadakov called him in and said, the Rebbe sees you, you're supposed to be on shlichus. What are you doing here every month? So he says that's where he gets his chayas from. He comes back to Shep chayas from the Rebbe, the Dal Ames here, and then he goes back and it gives him the ability to do his aved. So Rabbi Chadakov said, look, your shlichus is there, not here. And that's where you have to be. Okay, so he got his directive, so he didn't come back. A while, I don't know how long, but it was a while he didn't come back. He gets another call from Rabbi Chadakov. The Rebbe wants to know, why can we never see you? So he said, what do you mean? You called me and told me my shlichus is there. Yeah, the shlichus is there, but you have to always want to come. And whenever you can come, but you're not moving back. In other words, it's a on one hand, al korcha chatachai, on one hand, you have to go on your shlichus, but you have to always know it's al korcha. It's not where the shlichus is not your place. It's not your natural place, like the Maggid said. In the Hem is God Anders. You always have to know the home is not where your shlichus is. That's where the kavanah is. But you should always know where you're supposed to. So the question was a balance, I guess. Once in a while, you should come, not to completely cut off. So I'm not saying it's always easy, because it's a rotzev v'shuv. On one hand, you have to be on your shlichus and do it masa matam ba'amuna, and with exactly as the Rebbe wants. But you have to know where you're rooted. So we never forget Shamayim, just because we live in this world. We never forget that the kavanah is to transform the world into adira b'tachtenim. So that's the first point of Asiyah that I discussed. The mile of Asiyah, and ultimately its ultimate role as the end of Seder Shtalshlus, but Seif Ma'aseh Machshava Tchila, in it is embedded and rooted the deepest levels of the kavanah. That's in the world of Asiyah. We'll talk some more about it in the next shiur. Everyone have a good day. Be well. I'm going to figure this out. Okay.